Without a shadow of a doubt, it's the Crumpet Show in social media history. I want to welcome you to a special edition of the War Zone. Say, man, I'm doing some different things right now. They got some hot election races going on, and I'm gonna bring the candidates to you every chance I get. And right now, we going out to Fort Bend County. You know, I rocks with them, and I got Tonia Beard running for Fort Bend County Constable Precinct 2 against my man Squeaky. Y'all already know how I feel. So we gonna get into this thing, man. Say, man, I want to welcome y'all to the War Zone, man. It's a special edition. I'm doing my political thing. And throughout the whole early voting cycle, I am going to have just impromptu interviews with different candidates. With different candidates. That's what I'm gonna do. And right now I got a fabulous lady, law enforcement officer, Tonia Beard, who's running for Fort Bend County Constable Precinct 2. How you doing, Tonia?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So why don't I jump right into it. I don't just fight around with it.
Mhm.
Tell the people a little bit about you, where you're from, how long you've been in law enforcement, stuff like that.
Okay. My name is Tonia Beard. I've been a police officer for 32 years now. I'm originally born in Chicago, raised in Louisiana, reside in Texas, Houston now. Um, I love being a police officer. I've been with several different agencies, a total of about three. I love being a police officer. I'm running for constable right now because I believe I'm a great asset to the community. I understand where they're coming from and where they've been and where they're trying to go to.
All right. So you're running for precinct 2 constable. You're running against Darrell Schmidt. Um,
Yes,
and
sir.
I'll say this to Mr. Schmidt, if his people are watching, you have the same luxury to get in contact with me to come on the program. I open it up for everybody. Doesn't matter how I feel about you or about your campaign or who I decide I want to vote for. I give everybody the opportunity to come on and present themselves to the good people of the districts or the counties or the cities that they represent. It's been a tumultuous campaign for you. And I was just watching. I was watching, and I didn't like some of the things that people were trying to do to you.
Yes,
Actually,
sir.
I have. This is my first time meeting you,
Yes,
and
sir.
that's gonna sound strange to some people as much as I support you. But me, as you know, being over the war zone, I decided I would endorse you because I didn't like some of the tactics. I liked some of your views on your platform, and I felt I would endorse you for Fort Bend County Constable Precinct 2.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
I was in Fort Bend for a long time, for about 12 years. I lived there. So I got an opportunity to experience some of those constables in Precinct 2 under the good man Reuben Davis. But since Reuben has, left us, a lot of things have changed in Precinct 2. And some days is good, some days
Mhm.
is um you decided to run because you're a member of the community and you're always working in the community. I figured that out. And but you're running against a guy who's the incumbent, who has not basically played fair the whole election cycle. I've seen the dirty politics, and I don't think that's you. You've not even responded to the dirtiness of what people were trying to do to you, and I respect that. And so,
Yes.
let me just ask you a couple questions.
Mhm.
You look like a normal lady. You're a mom. You got
Yes.
5 kids. You struggle.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna ask you this question, and maybe you can answer it. And we interact with the audience, so they can ask questions too. And if
Yes,
they decide to ask a question, I'll try to pin it on the screen so you can see it, and then I'll even repeat it. What
yes, sir.
does you in your past getting an eviction notice? Because I know I got one. Have to do with you running for council?
It makes me human, for one thing. It just shows that I struggle like everybody else. You go through your trials and tribulations in life, and sometimes there's decisions that you have to make, for the benefit of your family. Being a single parent, it's a struggle day to day, but you continue, you do what you can, you keep your kids together, and you keep striving forward.
Exactly. So me and you have something in common. I don't know if you feel the way I feel about it, but we have something in common. Me and you done ran a couple of tolls. We done ran a couple of tolls in our lifetime, and I don't believe I should have to pay to ride on the freeway that my tax money paid to build. So I don't pay tolls. I'm
Mhm.
telling it to the state of Texas, I don't pay tolls. What does not paying a toll have to do with you being able to do the job of a precinct two constable in Fort Bend County?
Right. Couple of times, few times that I did go through the poll, it was an emergency. I had my flashers on, my children were sick, or my mom, I was trying to get to the hospital. And that's why those cases were dismissed, because I was able to show that they were emergency related. That's why I went through the toll.
So all this stuff got dismissed is not even an issue.
No, sir.
Well, why do you think that somebody you may have had respect for, or and I'm not gonna say necessarily him,
Mhm.
but someone in his camp would resort to trying to play dirty politics to beat a lady who's a single mom who you've done what you did what I did. I felt that we needed change. I ran for the school board, and I just felt that it was just time for me to step up and try to do my part. You've done the same thing.
Yes,
Why
sir.
why would somebody resort to dirty politics instead of just sticking to the issues?
Well, when I entered the race, I promised that I would run a clean race. Um, there's been enough mudslinging and back talking, backbiting, and all that other stuff. So I want to run a clean race. And sometimes people bring up, old stuff, dirty stuff that's unnecessary. And if they would do or investigate further, they would see that it's untrue. But, people just try to slander you and make you look, not worthy.
Well, your people speaking up for you because they saying it. Floyd Davis says it's desperation. That's what it was. It was desperation. Um,
Yes,
let's get into the meat and potatoes.
yes,
Um,
sir.
if some people answer this different ways,
Hmm.
what is your ideologies as it pertains to defunding the police?
Um,
Do you support or do you not support defunding the police?
I support the police. We need police. Are there some officers that should not be? Of course. That's with any type of profession that you have. But with the proper training, I believe that they can be a great asset. I myself, I always stay positive. I interact with the community. I try to keep everything going nicely, smoothly. There's some things that people don't understand. They will come to me and they'll ask, why is this way or why is that way? That's when you take the time as an officer to explain to them what's going on and why this is that way. But like I said, with the proper training, there's no mountain that we can't climb. There's nothing that we cannot achieve if we have the proper training. And it all boils down to training. I can't hear you.
Bridging the gap between
Okay,
the
now,
community and law enforcement right now is a trying issue because there's a lack
yes,
of trust with the
yes, it
community
is.
as it pertains to law
Mhm,
enforcement. Do
mhm,
you believe, or would you even consider, if you won this election, that I believe that if you live in a predominantly African American neighborhood, that you should be patrolled by African American cops? Because the interactions with other races, and it's not just African American, I mean, it could be any race. I think you should be patrolled by your race of people who live in your neighborhood. These officers should have a connection to the neighborhoods that they patrol. That's the one thing that I like about Missouri City. Is honestly, it may be one of the only communities I've seen where a lot of the officers in different fractions of law enforcement actually live in the county, in the community.
mhm,
So would you even consider, especially at night,
mhm.
African American officers patrolling African American communities?
Yeah, that's something that you should consider, because we understand us. That's a plus, but that's not to say that they cannot understand us as well. White officers can't understand, black people as well.
These men.
There's certain things that,
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
okay, there's certain things like we as black people will say, and we'll take that like, oh man, that's a joke, or that's this, or that's that. Whereas another race or another um, entity might think it's offensive, and it's not meant to be that way. I think we need to work together and strive. And then if some, like for an instance, when I was working at Precinct 2, there was an Indian. He was Pakistani, and he was working with us deputy constables at Fort Bend County Precinct 2. And when I would approach a door and I was serving them civil documents, I was like, "Hey, how you doing? I'm Deputy Beard for Fort Bend County Precinct 2. I have some civil documents for you. Hey, baby, if they have a little kid, you'll speak to them, and just make it friendly for them, even though you're giving them, a civil document showing that they're being sued or some bad information, for them. But it's how you pertain, how you affect that delivery. Okay. And so the other deputy, he was like, he goes, Tonia, he goes, how do you do that? I said, how do you do what? He said, you put everybody at ease. I said, that's what you're supposed to do. I said, you're invading their territory. You're coming to their home. You're stopping them from doing what they're in the progress of doing right now. So least you can do is be, hey, how you doing? I'm sewing this and that. I'm Tanya Beard. I'm, have some civil documents for you. You making it more human for them. And I believe with that, you can go, that goes a long way.
I think it has to be considered because when I look at how they put officers in neighborhoods, especially at night, throughout Harris County, City, Houston, Fort Bend County, a lot of people will say, well, that sounds a little racist to say put black officers in black neighborhoods. Well, okay, I don't see you putting black officers in white neighborhoods at night. Come on, you put their people in their neighborhood, put our people in our neighborhood because we know how to deal with each other,
True.
especially at night when a lot of police officers seem to have an attribute that scares me. At
Hmm.
night they seem a little scary, and these police encounters are handled, totally differently at night sometime than they would be handled in the daytime. So I think no matter what offices we hold, especially in law enforcement, we need to give that some consideration
True.
because that is just a true statement that at the end of the day it needs to happen. Um, we got to figure out, in my world, I don't know how to decipher between a good cop and a bad cop. I just don't know. So I'm looking at all cops as bad. So how do you deal with the trying to get the bad cops out of law enforcement if there are any in precinct 2 if you won the election?
Well, first of all, you will try to see who's actually, I guess, accountable. Accountability goes a long way. Who has a great rapport with the community? Who's effective with community policing, with building a better rapport? You, as the head administrator, you know your employees, or at least you should know your deputies. You should know each and every one of them. You know, at least know them by recognition. With a smaller department like precinct 2. Okay. Now, you know what your deputies are capable of. You know what they like, what they don't like. And if you know one of your deputies is having a bad day, talk to them. You know, hey man, you all right? You know, you got something going on? You okay? Hey, let's talk about it. Come to my office. We can talk about it. You know, and then that way you can figure out what's going on with them. That way you'll know how to address the situation that's at hand.
I think training is a big part of it. You know, trying
Mhm.
to deal with police reform. But how do you retrain a racist? How does that work? Maybe you can give me some insight to that.
Certain, if there, some things, now that's a good question.
That's a tough question because and
Yes, it
it's
is.
really
How
not a
do you
it's really not
retrain?
a trick question. It's a question I'm asking all law enforcement people. In order to change the culture, you have to figure out who the racists are. But
True.
then when we say, well, you know, he been in 20 years, he ain't really had a problem, but you know he's a racist. So how do you train somebody with a racist attitude?
With that racist attitude, he's bound to have had some problems. You know, it's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If they've had problems with this person in the past on how they address a situation, you know, when you're out there and I'm gonna take an example. One time before, I was working at another agency, and there was this white officer who was having a problem with a black guy, and he went even as far as to use the N word. Okay, then he turned around and I guess he forgot I was there, and I, being the senior officer, you know, I diffused the situation and handled the problem, and then dismissed the black guy, and I told him, I said, as long as he wore that uniform, I bet not ever hear him address another individual in that manner that he did. And he was like, well, there's a difference between black people and the N word. No, I say, if I was walking down the street in regular clothes, I would be the N word. I said, so you need to go back to training. I said, I'm gonna talk to the supervisor and take it from there. I say, but I don't ever want to hear you say that word again. And he told me, he said, you know what, I never really thought about it, but once you brought it to my attention, he said he was like, man, I didn't know. I said, well, now you know. So from that point on, I didn't have any more problems with that particular, officer, but not with me. So you have to start with yourself and inside your department. When you see things, you got to say something.
Now that I'm gonna piggyback off that.
Hmm.
30, 32 years is what you've given law enforcement.
Yes, sir.
Does the blue wall exist?
Um,
If look, I'm gonna help you with this one. You might if you're scared, you're gonna have to get you a dog. Does the blue wall exist?
I okay. When you say blue wall, what do you mean? Like we don't
That
arrest
that
police
blue
officers,
wall,
or we don't?
that blue wall of silence. That when a good officer see a bad officer do something, they don't say nothing. They don't report it. Now,
In
if
the,
that's too tough of a question, we can go past it. Because remember, you would be the top cop in precinct
right.
two, and I'm pretty sure that you would not put up with the blue wall.
No, no. In the past, there has been situations of that magnitude, but now a lot of deputies, officers are stepping forth, and they're bringing it to the forefront. This is not acceptable. This is just not acceptable. So, does the blue wall exist? Yes, it used to. Are we currently trying to change it? Yes, we are. You have
From
to
a
say something.
citizen's standpoint, from a guy that's very active in
Hmm.
the community, and I'm in a lot of different communities all over the country.
Hmm.
The blue wall has to go.
Hmm.
We can't deal with it. It has to go for a reason because
True.
we're about to have a civil war on American soil. It's going to be the people versus the government and law enforcement.
Hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're
And
saying.
the blue wall has to go. How tough? Here's my question to you: how tough is it for an African American woman to deal with the perils that go on every day inside of law enforcement, with the harassment, with the not being promoted when they should, not making the money that they should compared to male officers? What's that life like inside of there as a female black officer?
Sometimes it's hard. Um, you do your best, and some you do above and beyond, and still you don't get recognized. It's still a male dominated job. Employment is still male dominated. You just do what you can. You do your best and be the best at what you do, and hopefully someone will recognize you for the effort that you put forth. It's hard. It's very difficult for females right now, but we're striving and we're making headway. We just got to stick to um, the situations at hand and try to move forward. Yes, it is hard, and yes, it is hard when you see other people get promoted that don't even have halfway or near as much experience as you have, or let's say the good old boy system. That's something that we can change, but you have to implement the changes from within the inside of the agency.
We're gonna get a little personal right now. Whatever you don't want to talk about, you don't have to.
Okay.
In your past,
Hmm.
you were a rape victim.
Yes.
You were sexually assaulted,
Yes.
rape victim.
Yes,
And
sir.
this particular guy,
Hmm.
which I've done a little research, dug a little bit, and found out some things about him. He's resurfaced,
Yes.
and he's a big supporter of your opponent. Now, this
Yeah.
is a guy who's put posts on Facebook and saying that you're lying, but based on court records, I think that he did 6 years in jail for what he did.
In
He was in
prison.
prison for 6 years,
Right.
so undoubtedly you couldn't have been lying. But how do you feel knowing that the person that violated you is one of the biggest supporters of your opponent? And more importantly, the person that violated you is a former police officer. How does that feel?
Well, it doesn't feel good. Believe that. Um, it's disheartening, and especially being a female. One thing I can say is that it's taught me how to be strong inwardly. I can now tell a female, or a rape victim, I understand exactly where you are in this situation because I've been there. I've been in your shoes. But coming from another police officer is an ultimate slap. It hurts. It's offensive to me. It's like it's making light of a horrible situation that I had to live through. My family was afraid. This individual broke into my house, um, terrorized my mother, my children. We all had to go through situations. I had to have the police sit at my house. Now here I am, a police officer, and I had to have the police sit at my house when I went to work to protect my mother and my children while I went to work
So
from this individual.
let me ask you a question in between that. Now, this
Yes,
guy, from what I've been looking at, he also had other victims, and some of these rapes were committed while he was on duty. Am I correct?
yes,
And this man, I don't know if you even know, but I see it, is one of the biggest supporters of your opponent who's the incumbent. And the
yes.
incumbent, hold on a second. I don't know what I did. Hold on. Okay. The incumbent doesn't have a problem with this guy posting negative things about you. I mean, as a man, regardless of being your opponent, if I knew him, then I would say, no, look, dude, don't do this. Don't put my shirt on. You know, that tells me we're what's the word am I looking for? We are actually promoting
Mm-hmm.
that type of culture. We're condoning it. And
Mm-hmm.
and your opponent has allowed this to go on. And I've not seen anything where he's even said anything to this guy, because some support you don't need.
Right.
And I'm gonna tell you something, my sister. To be able to be sitting here and talking to me today, you're a strong God-fearing woman.
Yes, sir.
You're a strong God-fearing woman, man. And it is what it is, but I just think that is just one of the most racist, I mean, racist against women for sure,
Mm-hmm.
things that anybody could actually do. My good friend, I don't know if you know him, Brad Jordan, multi-platinum recording artist, just asked me, did you go to Willow Ridge? I don't think she went to Willow Ridge, Brad.
No, no.
No, she was born in Chicago, right?
Right.
Yeah, raised in Louisiana and then migrated down here.
Right.
So,
Parents moved here. Yeah.
you know, would being a former rape victim
Mm-hmm.
and possibly being the constable in precinct 2, would you put any programs in place to help women that have gone through something like that?
Of course, I would implement a domestic violence program um, to help those who have been through these situations. Um, to it all comes back to counseling. Man, I know with that situation, then with my family being stalked, my children were afraid when I would leave home. My mother retired from her job just so she could be at home with my children, just so I could continue to work um, because they were afraid. And so even after my situation, I had to go to counseling. There's nothing wrong with counseling. I'm gonna let you know that right now, because sometimes you need to talk it out. When I was being examined, examined after my rape. A couple of nurses, they said, "Wow, she's a police officer. Why are all the police officers outside?" Because one of their own had been hurt. There were a lot of police officers in the hallway, and they were there to help me. And so one of the nurses asked, "Why are the police officers in the hallway?" And the other nurse stated, "Oh, well, she's a police officer." And the first nurse stated, "She's a police officer. Well, heck, I feel safe. She couldn't even protect herself. How can she protect me?" So see, that was another slap to me. We as women, we have to support each other. We have to. Just because I'm a police officer and I'm trained to defend myself as well as the public, to provide safety and security for them. But at the end of the day, I'm still human. I knew this individual for 3 days. And by him being a fellow police officer, I let my guard down. That was something I never should have done. I ended up, beaten, slapped, choked, all these other things. And then of course you're shocked because you're like, this is a police officer. This is my fellow brother. How can this happen? You know? But eventually I fought him off and I got my godson and I left. But things do happen. Even to police officers. We are victims sometimes. It's how you come through it is what makes you a better person.
Here's my next question. We
Mhm.
saw what happened to George Floyd.
Yes.
You're the precinct 2 constable. That's hypothetically. You're the precinct 2 constable.
Okay.
That happens with one of your deputies. Are you going to wait for the mayor, city council, whoever, to terminate this person? How would you have handled that?
Shut it down right then. No, no. That shouldn't have been. That shouldn't have been. That should have not happened. And there's no explanation as to why you put your knee on someone's neck. You're not trained that way. That shouldn't have happened.
Is that a normal training, or have you? I mean, maybe it's different in Minnesota compared to Texas, but is that a normal training for a law enforcement officer?
No, it's not. It's not. The training that I've seen and been exposed to, you never put your knee on anyone's neck like that. They need they need to breathe. And if you have your knee on that person's neck, their windpipe, how are they going to breathe?
So you'd have fired him, basically.
Yes.
They might have got mad at you if you'd fired him so fast, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Um, One, you're a strong person, man. I got to give that to you, and hopefully I didn't disrespect you by bringing that up. Um, Hopefully I did not disrespect you by bringing that up. Voter suppression. Just follow me on this. Normally, when we think of voter suppression, we think of people limiting the amount of polls that are open.
Mhm.
Folks doing trickery at the polls. But from an African American standpoint, we attribute that to white people. That's what we would think. It would be some white people doing that to us.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know if you even knew. I saw you at the polls, never spoke to you. This is my first time actually speaking to you.
Mhm.
I showed up at the polls for a reason.
Mhm.
Because I heard one of the candidates that I had endorsed was at the polls getting bullied and picked on. And Can you give the people some insight of what may have happened to you at the polls this week? But I will say this here. Ever since I showed up, it ain't happened again.
Mm-hmm.
Give them a little insight of how voter suppression works some days, where people are trying to intimidate people when they're just working the polls, trying to obtain a position that they feel they may be qualified for.
Well, there was a person that approached me um, asking a certain question. And at first, I didn't hear what they had asked. And I was like, excuse me. And they said it again. And I told them I didn't know what they were referring to. And so the person shoved their phone in my face and they were saying that, you know what I'm talking about and blah, blah, blah. And I knew then at that moment that they were trying to be confrontational. So I walked off from that person. Um, some things you just don't give any credit to. You just walk off from them because I knew that they were trying to be, provoking me, trying to make a situation out of nothing. And so that's when I just walked off from that person. And they continued a couple of feet behind me, saying certain little things, and I just walked off and ignored them.
And for you guys, I know the whole story. I mean, like I say, I showed up at the polls and I never said nothing to Miss Beard, but I was just there and I was observing and I made it known that nobody is going to bully anybody at these polls. You're going to leave these people alone. And the sad part about it, this person that did that to you was in one of the quote unquote baddest sororities walking around. I think you AKAs need to get with your people and tell them that's not the conduct that they should exhibit at a voting poll, especially with a candidate. That should not happen. Now, being a law enforcement officer, you come in contact with youth all the time. Will there be programs to help try to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the youth in the precinct that you would be over?
Of course there is. Yes, sir. I'm going to implement programs. The neighborhood police, kids and cops, the DARE program, drug resistance. I'm going to implement as many programs as I can. When I first came to Fort Bend County Precinct 2, we had summer youth camps, and I'm going to try to get that restarted again. Well, once COVID is, cleared and we can gather again. You need to help the community, bring the children together, let them see positive influences, positive people, positive things that can happen, and that would help bridge the gaps between the police and the community.
Now, the Watchman style of policing is the style that I like the most.
Hmm.
Some people may not know about the Watchman style of policing. That means every time that they interact with somebody, they don't necessarily have to go to jail.
Hmm.
Every offense is not a jailable offense in the eyes of a lot of people.
Hmm.
So, would you be willing to implement portions, or maybe just implement the Watchman? And I think you already live by the Watchman style of policing.
Hmm.
Make sure that that's a prominent part of your platform and your department once you would take over.
Yes, sir, I would. I would implement more programs for the seniors. I would implement more grant funded programs for the seniors as well as the children. Um, I also want to implement more programs that would help bring the community together, so that people can understand more of the seniors. They can understand more of the youth. Just because a young guy listens to rap music does not mean that they're a thug, or they're looking for problems. It doesn't mean that. And if you hear a song that you like and you out there, there's nothing wrong with getting out there and, hey, I like that song, or bebopping with the community or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. It shows the community that you're human, that you like music too, or you can play basketball. I throw football with my son. You throw footballs out there. Make yourself human to the community. Make yourself approachable to the community. So if there is something going on, or if there is something going down, they'll be comfortable coming to you and talking to you about certain things that they probably wouldn't tell other people.
I tell you this here, I get with you regardless. I know you're gonna win, and
Mhm.
we started a bridge the gap type of situation
Mhm.
in the
Mhm.
Houston Independent School District with the Houston Police Department. And I think that your department could probably do the same thing with the local schools in your district. And
Mhm.
all it is you show up with your officers at whatever school. And at
Mhm.
lunchtime, we bring the DJ and we have some good food and we just interact between the
Mhm.
kids and the officers.
Exactly.
And they get to know the officers get to know the kids. And
That's
I
right.
mean, a lot of days that in itself would could help solve crimes. It could do a
True.
lot of different things, but it will change the culture. It will help rebuild the
Exactly.
trust
That's
from
right.
the community to
Exactly.
the to the law enforcement agency. So when you win, I'll be glad to sit down with you and show you exactly what we need to do that. And the crazy part,
Yes.
it requires almost zero funding.
Exactly.
It requires almost zero funding. Just me brainstorming one day,
Yep.
and that's what it was. So
Yep.
I'm gonna tell you something, man. I am highly impressed with you, and that's one reason that I endorsed you when I looked at the things that you want to do, the things that you have done. You've been very active in your community.
Yes,
Uh,
sir.
I can't find anybody that can say something bad about you. And
Yes, sir.
when people started picking on you and saying things, I'm like, I love the underdog. So
Yes.
I'm gonna rock with Tonia Beard. So I'm gonna ride it out with you at the polls. Stand toe to toe with you at the polls, and try to get everybody I can get from Fort Bend County that can vote in precinct 2 for sure to vote for
Yes,
Tonia
sir.
Beard, because there needs to be a change.
Yes,
That
sir.
bullying mentality, the disrespectfulness of a constable towards African American women, it
Yes, sir.
needs to be gone. This is an opportunity for Fort Bend County to put somebody in that seat. And once again, because I applaud you women, not just African American, but women, put a woman in there and let her do what she need to do, because they seem like they getting it done nowadays.
Yes, sir.
Seem
Yes, sir.
like they getting it done, and us fellas around here, we dropping the ball. Especially my African American sisters, y'all are showing up and showing out right now. So I want to wish you good luck, Tonia, and you ain't got that much longer for early voting, and then we got to get you past this one, and then get you to the big one in November.
Yes,
And
sir.
I think that you will do great. And before we go, is there anything else? Now I leave it with this: a simple question.
Yes, sir.
Tell these people why they should vote for you over Daryl Schmidt.
Because I am more compassionate. I am human. I understand. I've been through the storms. I've been through the struggles. I'm a great leader. I'm a great motivator. I encourage people to do that their very best. I will never discourage anyone from trying to be the best that they can be. Um, just do your best. Try to be everything that you want to be in life. Don't let no one discourage you. Continue. Set your heart to it. Put your goals ahead of you and focus on the prize. Focus on your focus, as they call it, and just go for it.
Well, I thank you. Say, man, I want to thank you, Tonia, for taking the time out to sit down with a old fool. But I ain't a fool. If I was in Fort Bend County, you'd have had my vote at 7:01 on the first day when early voting started. It's time for Fort Bend to do something different. Thanks to Tonia Beard. Thank you for tuning in to the War Zone all weekend. This is what we gonna do. We bringing the real candidates on. Those that have the guts to sit down and talk to me. It ain't that bad of an interview, but 7 o'clock. Wendell Champion, Republican. We going in, man, from welfare to West Point. Until then, I holler at y'all.